Good morning and warmly welcome to this webinar that we have called with very short notice. On Tuesday, the European Commission presented its long-awaited but novel European Affordable Housing Plan. And in this webinar, we will ask the question, what's in it for Europe's tenants? And I have two experts, and I cannot think of any people that are better to answer my questions than the two people who have joined me today this morning. Barbara Steenbergen, you are head of the International Union of Tenants liaison office to Brussels, and you've headed this office since it started, and you know everything that there is to know about European Union housing policy. And there hasn't been much housing policy until now, when the Europe is really showing its muscles, and you have dwelled into these report, the European Affordable Housing Plan, for the past days now, and you will tell us a lot about the background as well. And with me as well, I have Martin Hofverberg, who is the chief economist of the Swedish Union of Tenants. It happens to be the largest tenants association, not only in Europe, but actually in the world. So Martin, so happy that you could also take time from your busy schedule to join us here today. I want to tell all the viewers that this, of course, we're just 2 days after the release of this massive plan. So these will be first impressions, first comments, takeaways, worries, and we are happy to get back to you with more comments and more analysis later. My name is Lisa Pelling. I head a trade union funded think tank called Arena Idé, and we host this webinar together with Bostad 2030, Housing 2030, that is a think tank devoted to housing issues here in Sweden. No more time for introductions. Barbara, tell us, what is the European Affordable Housing Plan and what's the background?
Good morning, everybody. Good morning from Brussels. Today is a very important day in Brussels too. We have the council, and I can tell you that all the roads are blocked currently because of security reasons, because we have many important things to negotiate upon. But today we are talking about the first ever EU Affordable Housing Plan, and Lisa and Martin, I think it is very important that we give a first impression what is going on, what is intended to go on, and how did it all start? Yes, Lisa, you're right. Since 15 years, I'm doing the advocacy here at European level towards the institutions for the International Union of Tenants, which is the largest union for tenants in the world. We unite currently more than 75 member organizations everywhere. And I'm very proud to tell you that I think what we achieved here at European level can be, if all forces of light work together, can be a breakthrough in housing. Why is that so? Perhaps I start with the picture. At European level, housing, you can compare it in the past with the long and bended road with many obstacles, with many crossroads. So something which you would actually not easily take. And now with this plan, which is 2 days old, but which has been worked out in the last year, we have a highway for more affordable and social housing in Europe. I do know that you in Scandinavia, you do not have social housing, so let me call it public, social, and affordable housing. And I do regard this as a major breakthrough, because for the first time we have more tenant protection in it, a very strong focus on affordability, on accessibility, and perhaps to give you an impression, the first sentence in this plan is the acknowledgement of the European Commission that housing is a fundamental right and not a commodity. And I think this is a very good start, a starting point. We are on the start of the highway, and now we have to fill it in together with the member states, with the local and regional authorities.
Excellent, Barbara. Great to know. Just about the background. So I was saying previously there hasn't been much housing policy. Of course, there's housing policy in everything, and you have been extremely busy the last 15 years following everything. But there is a particular background to this affordable housing plan, and there has been a European-wide consultation. Do you want to say something about the background just this past year?
Yes, yes. Well, the background in the long term, so 15 years ago, this was also the reason I would say that we opened this office, that we have seen that more and more of our national legislation is immediately affected by European directives. And it started with the state aid cases. I know that in Sweden there has been a very strong complaint against the public housing companies. We had the same in other countries. We had the same in the Netherlands. We had the same in France. We had it in Belgium. We had it in Luxembourg. So it started actually with the big question of who should have market access to build affordable public and social housing. And can the state put more money into it? Is this in line with the Growth and Stability Pact of the European Union and the debt rules? So this is something which is a very, very strong policy that EU can put on the member states, and therefore it is necessary to do something. That was the starting point, state aid. Then we come to the climate change. How to save energy, how to save CO2 emissions. What can we do? How can we make our housing units fit again, fit for the future? How can we green them, make them healthy, but also energy efficient, that the tenants and the residents who live in there save money and have more health and comfort? That was the second thing. And everybody knows that Europe is in charge of energy policy. Last but not least, there was more and more this social aspect that we have seen. The people spend more and more of their disposable income for housing and energy costs. And this is hitting the heart of the European economy. We do know that from any costs that a household has to carry, the housing costs are the highest, especially for tenants. People living in rental housing is the highest. So the European Union saw at once, this is not good. There is no power of purchase anymore for the people because they give all their money to the landlords. And the second thing, the people do not move anymore because they cannot find affordable housing. This is called labor mobility in technical terms that we have very frequently, unfortunately, here in Brussels. But this hampers the economy in booming regions. So even the business couldn't find people anymore working for them because they could not afford to live there where the businesses are. So these are the main roads. And you see, this is big economy. This is extremely important.
Yes. Thank you so much, Barbara, for giving us this background. So for people who are into state aid rules, the European Affordable Housing Plan is a must read. For people who are into climate change issues, the energy efficiency issues, and also the entire energy consumption issue in Europe. But this is also very much of a social issue. Martin Hofverberg, Chief Economist of Hyresgästföreningen. What have you seen in this plan, and what are the main takeaways from your perspective?
Let me just begin by saying that I think I agree with everything that Barbara's been saying here, that Europe desperately needs this affordable housing plan. Because we are, as Barbara's been into, we are in the midst of a severe affordability crisis that even this European Commission, despite its very conservative leanings, has realized that it can no longer ignore. So for Swedish tenants, this plan, I would say, is vital because it signals that housing is finally being recognized at the EU level as a fundamental social right. And my first impression is it's better than expected. So the commitment to revising the state aid rules, which is at the core of this suggestion, the SGEI, is a major win, I would say. Moving away from a narrow focus on social housing for only the most vulnerable to affordable housing for wider groups is exactly what we need. And this, crucially, the plan allows for support to both private and public landlords, which it's the only way it can work within the universal model that we have. So for years, I would say, we have raised our voice for the Swedish state to be able to use state subsidies without the threat of the Commission or the courts breathing down our necks. And this could be the breakthrough for us to be able to do that. But it's, of course, as you said at the beginning, Lisa, it's early days. So we need to analyze the suggestions, we need to take it home, but the signs are there.
Also, the fact that the plan is actually called the Affordable Housing Plan, I think for the viewers, I think most of them are aware that there's a big difference between affordable and social, where social in the European Union context is meant housing for vulnerable groups, people with low income, the homeless, and affordable housing is the kind of housing that is compatible with the universal housing policies where you might have low incomes, but you can stay on the housing even when your incomes increase, and you can build housing also for people of average incomes. You don't have to be socially vulnerable to access this kind of housing. Okay. So speaking of the access to housing and housing as a social issue, there is also some focus on this in the plan, on specifically vulnerable group. They also single out students and young people. Is this something that you have been looking at too, Barbara?
Yes, definitely. I think we had a special look and a worry also because we have seen that what we call the essential workers have been driven out or priced out, let's say priced out of the cities. So the people with a regular income who are doing essential work that the society is functioning. I'm talking about teachers, bus drivers, policemen, nurses. So these people were more and more priced out from the cities, although these are the people who have to be in the cities because they are needed urgently. They work in shifts. So that was the start where we thought, well, it is very strange and it is not compatible, the policy of the European Union, that they focus so much on housing for the most vulnerable. Of course, it is necessary to have housing for the most vulnerable, first things first, but there must be also more affordable housing for the low and middle incomes. So we said it is important to do this. The Commission took this up fully in the state aid decision, which has been mentioned by Martin earlier. This is one of the core pieces of the current EU Affordable Housing Plan. But they also identified people with special problems, the young people. This has something to do also with brain drain. This has something to do with young people with high education, university level, are not able to live in the cities anymore. They cannot take the jobs because they find nothing. They are a little bit the generation which is lost. And this is also the generation, if I may say this quite harshly, who might never become a homeowner. They will stay in the rental market because housing is becoming unaffordable more and more. So the Commission identified them also as a target group, as well as elderly people. I think this is very important because this has the aspect of barrier-free living and housing. What you say in the Scandinavian countries, the universal design. I like that very much, this point of view. And also people who have, let's say, problems because of the gender pay gap. Single parents, women who usually earn less, who take care of the children if they are alone, and who also have most of the time less paid jobs than the men. So this is all recognized, and I think this is very progressive.
So we have already some questions coming in from the audience. I want you to save maybe for last also maybe the things that you are maybe a little bit worried about, the things that you will be closely looking at. So we will, give all the actors that are following this a sense of where do we need to, focus now. But there are some questions. There is a question, Martin, to get back to this issue of revised state aid rule that the plan envisages. Adam Agas asks, he says, there seems to be limited interest in Sweden towards the revision of the SGEI decision. So this is state, I don't know, Barbara will have to help me.
Services of general economic interest.
Services of general economic interest. Can you use state subsidies? Is it only for social housing, only for vulnerable group, low income? Or can you actually use state subsidy also for affordable housing, for universal housing? He says, how do you actually think state aid will be used in Sweden? So Martin, you want to comment that?
Yeah. So this is the million-dollar question, right? Historically, EU competition rules pressured Sweden to either adopt a selective social housing system or force public housing to act more like profit-driven developers. So that was a choice that we were placed in front of like 15 years ago. And Barbara mentioned that was the state aid decisions by the courts. So we chose the latter in the 2011 compromise known as Allbolagen in Sweden. And in that law, we ensured equal treatment between private and public landlords. So the intent to broaden SGEI to affordable housing is very promising, I would say. However, to those who think that the plan makes Allbolagen obsolete, I would say no, because it boils down to equal treatment. Because we want a unified rent setting system, we can't give public companies benefits that private actors don't receive, or we risk a return to legal challenges regarding unfair competition. And now I come to answer the question. So where this does create an opening is in the relationship between the state and the market, not the municipalities and the market, because there it is much easier to give a state aid and still have equal treatment between private and public actors. So this allows, in my view, but it's still early days, for future state subsidies that align with our universalist model. But that is, the devil is in the detail, right? Yes. So we will have to analyze and take it back home, but it's, I think, very promising.
Very promising. And then also for the Swedish audience to remember, you need politicians who want to make use of these opportunities as well. Now they can no longer maybe use the EU regulations as an excuse not to invest in affordable housing. You need to move beyond that point as well. Barbara, for you, there's a question from Kerstin Kärnekull, who is a person who works closely together with us and our housing think tank. She says, what is the place of community-led housing, like co-housing, eco-villages, and a community-built housing in this plan? Are they mentioned at all?
Yes, they are mentioned. They are mentioned several times as best practices. We also consider that living in a cooperative rental housing is one of the best, let's say, forms how to live, because you are having also shares of the cooperative. So you are also in the steering wheel. And it is a very safe kind of living. And all these forms are absolutely mentioned in the plan. And I may say so, we had a lot of emphasis in doing so towards the Commission. We have been consulted extensively. I can tell you the last year, I have never so many hearings and meetings in my entire life, sometimes 4 a day, but it was worse, I think. The entire plan has a focus on social and affordable housing built by not-for-profit or limited profit providers, while not excluding, and this is important that Martin voiced it already, while not excluding the private investors. But the idea of the plan is that private investors are also in the position to build social, public, and affordable housing. That is possible, housing that is used by public authorities. But they have to play according to the same rules and obligations like the public housing providers. This is creating a level playing field. And in the plan, it is said that we need per year 650,000 more affordable flats in Europe. And to reach this goal, and I think this is a very good goal, we have to open, let's say, the highway for investment and fast investment, which is not hampering, let's say, the construction sector, but at the same time is protecting the residents by affordability caps, by also long-term investment in social and public and affordable housing. So we are talking about a kind of holding period of 20 years. If private investors go into the market, these houses must be at least 20 years.
This is great, Barbara. I know also for Kerstin Kärnekull and others following closely, speaking about eco-villages, there's also talk about energy communities. So enabling residents, tenants, housing owners to build their own resilient energy production facilities, which I think is also very inspiring. So there are more questions coming
Lisa,
in.
can I just comment on that? Because
yes, please.
Just a short comment. I mean, all that's mentioned there is all quite and well, but do we really want Brussels to micromanage how we use our types of tenures or our land policy? So I think we have to always realize that the main bulk of these issues are national issues or municipal issues. So for me, the importance isn't in having those kind of how should we say, guiding principles from the Commission. I don't see that as useful. The main win and the getaway with this new plan is that it allows countries to have a greater amount of state subsidies, a greater freedom to exact their housing policies of the people will. So that is the main takeaway for me. I'm not against having more cooperative housing, but I think it's a national issue.
Yes, very good. I think Barbara, in my screen you are frozen.
Yes, unfortunately, but I hope that you can still hear me.
Perfect. Your voice is here. Very good. So we have had a question about the rights of tenants. I was also actually worried when I read through because I thought the word empowerment is there. Tenants are mentioned, but there's also a lot of mention of investment that I think will go to building companies. It's a very, in a sense, pro-business strategy in that it talks about removing red tape. There's a lot of money flowing into this sector, and I just thought to uphold the power of balance here, you would need maybe to address and to talk about the rights of tenants. So Patrick Kenna is asking, I can see only one recommendation on the rights of, I can see only one recommendation in the plan to support tenants, identify models and share good practices combining the protection of property right owners with tenant security and support research and exchanges of good practices. So is this enough? If that is also your impression that there is only one recommendation into this issue? Barbara, have you looked into this?
Yes, absolutely. This is a direct link, of course, where the tenants are mentioned explicitly. But I think you have to take a look at the broader picture. So first of all, what do tenants want? they want affordable housing and social housing, and this is the main issue that should be tackled by the EU Affordable Housing Plan. What do tenants also want? Another theme that we have not touched yet. We need more affordable housing in the city centers, which is currently also under threat by extensive short-term and short-stay rentals. This is also immediately mentioned in the plan, and there will be hard legislation on that. What tenants also want is, of course, more level playing field with the landlords. And in several, let's say, passages, it is mentioned that we have to take care of affordability for the residents, especially when it comes to energy renovation. So it is just, let's say, the immediate mentioning of tenants, for instance, for consumer law or for the rent law. This is not done at European level because they are not in charge. This is what Martin mentioned as a micromanagement. I like that word. But where they are in charge, I think there are some very, very good aspects which are in the plan. But again, the devil is in the detail. We have to check how this is at the end then pursued by the member states. And this is in the hands of the member states.
Yes. Martin, do you want to comment as well?
I would say the exact same thing as Barbara. I'm not that worried about it because it's a national competence. So it's not for the EU to decide anyway. But of course, it's always better to have more of a force for tenants' rights, even in documents like these. But I'm not that worried that that's the only written text about it, because, as I said, it's a national competence and it's for the nation state to decide anyway.
Yes. There, just to dwell a little bit more on this issue of short-term rentals. So that's what we associate with Airbnb. This is also an issue that the Swedish Union of Tenants have raised recently. The hotelification, and that the Hyresgästföreningen here in Stockholm have identified like 900 buildings where they think there is illegal subletting, renting out to short-term rentals, and this, of course, is a huge issue in many big touristic cities. And the Commission, in its housing plan, speaks of areas under housing stress. Is it good that this plan addresses this issue? What do you say, Martin?
Yeah, it is. It's great. It's a growing problem, and we were making reports about this back in 2018 already. So in particular in Stockholm, where we see apartments being hotelified, as you mentioned, Lisa, and removed from the long-term rental stock. Yes. So the EU can make a massive difference here by creating a common transparency framework with mandatory data sharing. So I would say that Sweden is not yet as badly afflicted as some neighboring countries, especially in the continent, Berlin, Barcelona, those kind of places, partly because of our tenure types. So we have bostadsrättsföreningar, cooperatives, where they usually require the owner to actually live in the apartment. And rental tenants can be evicted for illegal subletting. So we don't have the same culture in Sweden, or legal framework for that matter, of people buying up dozens of apartments just to rent them out. And this, I think, is the foundation of hotelification in other countries. You can own several properties and rent them out to tourists. So we don't have that, and that spares us from some of the effects of this. And of course, Sweden is not a tourist country in the same way as Spain, at least not yet. But we are afflicted by it, and this is a huge issue on the continent. So this is one of the cornerstones, I would say.
So this seminar, now I think you're back, Barbara. Excellent. So we are dwelling on this plan from the perspective of the tenants, but as Barbara mentioned in the beginning, an important background of the plan is the climate crisis, the knowledge that whatever housing we need to build it, planetary boundaries, and we need to invest heavily in energy efficiency and making sure that housing is compatible with the climate transition that we need to do. There's this one, the first part of the plan is very much devoted into construction. It says removing barriers, enhancing efficiency within the construction sector, strengthening the productivity and innovation in construction. I have learned from following housing issues for a few years. Sometimes it's not the availability of housing that is the problem, but it is the unequal availability of housing. So the problem is not that we're not building, the problem is that we're not redistributing whatever housing there already is. I don't know if Barbara, Martin, you have any comments on this. Is the plan lack this perspective of inequality and accessing to housing? I suppose what I want to ask is, does the European Union now risk just investing massive in construction, and this construction then being, taken over by people who already have enough square meters to dwell on, while, using all the remaining budget that we have for construction? Should there be more talk here about the equal distribution of housing?
Clear, yes.
I would say that the EU has to focus on the issues that it has competence in. So I'm not against focusing on efficiency, because that's one of the core competences for EU and the free market. So, but what we must ask ourselves is, again, do we want Brussels to micromanage our land policy and stuff like that? And that's, I think, is a tenet in this document, that it wants to do that. So removing unnecessary restraints on land supply, for instance, that's really important, and we are advocating for that. But I think these decisions belong to the nation state and our municipalities. And also removing barriers that must never lead to a race to the bottom regarding social or environmental standards. So that's, I think, our key issues in discussing these matters. But I'm not at all surprised that the EU has this focus, because it does what it has a competence in. And I'm not sure that I want them to have more policies regarding the social aspect that you mentioned, Lisa, because that will be, again, micromanaging the countries. We have different models for this. So just give back the power to the member states to enact their policies. And this, I think, is in this document. And that's, for me, is quite enough.
Yes. Barbara, what's your comment on the power balance here, investment in housing or redistributing housing?
Yeah. I think it is quite a thin line where the EU is balancing upon. Absolutely. But I think they did it in a quite smart way. First of all, they recognize that housing is a fundamental right. This also entails obligations. And these obligations must be fulfilled by the EU, the member states, the local and regional authorities. And I do see, in line with that what Martin previously said, that there is a clear tendency in this plan to give more power to the municipalities and regions, principle of subsidiarity. And this is a very good development. Just to give you an example, there is a clear mentioning that those regions and cities, they can have housing tension zones, where they make a very strong policy dedicated to increase affordability, to ban short-term and short-stay rentals, where they can say, we don't want this anymore. Where they can have very hard public saying it is not the highest bidder who gets the land, but the bidder who builds affordable housing, which will stay affordable housing for a lifetime, for a life circle, because it is built by taxpayers' money. These are all tendencies that we did not have before. At European level, the tendency was, when it comes to housing, open it up and the highest bidder can do it. So, and this is also one of the reasons why our housing market is completely derailed. We have some vacant housing. Many people say that. But this is luxurious housing, or this is absolutely rundown housing. So there is something going wrong at European level. And we also do know that big investors are not stopping at borders. Investment in housing is going beyond borders, and we have seen a massive concentration and financialization on the housing markets in Europe and beyond, which is one of the root causes of the crisis that we have currently. And also this is tackled, and I think there we need a European common view, because the big investors, the big pension funds, the global players, they are not stopping at country rules. The opposite is true. They are looking where there are loopholes and then they go in. And this is something that must be tackled. And I'm very grateful that this aspect of financialization is explicitly mentioned in the plan, together with the aspect of having more transparency on our housing markets. Who owns what for which prices and rents. There is a clear recommendation also in the EU Affordable Housing Plan that member states must guarantee transparency for tenants what has been the previous rent. So when you move into an apartment, you should have the right to know what is the previous rent in order to counter rent hikes, exploitation, criminal rents, in order to have more transparency on the markets. And I think this is a very strong protection of consumers. But again, this is a recommendation to the member states to fulfill this.
And both of these things are, of course, high time, because as the Commission says itself, the financialization of the housing sector has meant that housing prices have gone up 60% over the last 10 years. Rents 20%. As you said, Martin, in the beginning, Europeans are really facing an affordability crisis, and one of the major costs that people encounter in their daily lives is housing and be able to afford the rent. So there is a question from Julie Lawson. I see if I can show it here to you. She says, does the plan approach enable and encourage development of more mature affordable housing systems in Europe, the type which revolves around surpluses to grow? I think what she means is like the Danish system that's called the Landsbyggefond, where you have funds that are stays in the system. Whenever there's a surplus, this is reinvested in building new houses. How do you think, Martin or Barbara, that this kind of systems are taken care of in the plan?
I think it's too early to tell, actually. But I mean, it has survived. The Danish system, for instance, has survived during these much more, shall we say, frugal times of the EU Commission state subsidy rules. So if they are made more generous, I don't see how that would this affect, for instance, the Danish system. So I think a lot of systems will thrive more under this new regime than the old order. But then the question is, does it actually make it a lot more better? This is still unclear for me, because I've only read the text a couple of times. But yes, we have to analyze it, see where the effects are, and come back to this issue.
Yes. I was also reading it your way, Martin. I see that they mention explicitly the Danish model. They also mention the fact that similar models are used in other countries as well. And I think your evaluation that at least it will not become worse for these kinds of non-profit or limited profit or revolving fund housing. Do you want to comment upon that as well, Barbara?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I also do see by experiences from other countries that public-private partnerships, this is not the holy Bible, to have more affordable housing. Sometimes even the opposite is true. So you have to be extremely careful. It's all about public procurement rules and obligation. zoning law. So we are talking hard law, but this is in the hands of the member states. I hope that there will be, let's say, a more concrete plan about these conditionalities, rules and obligations when investing in the housing sector with taxpayers' money in this to be established European Housing Alliance. So there must be an overarching board who will oversee this. And having said that, I count on the European Commission that the consumer side of the market, so the tenants and residents, are part of these high-level European alliance, because we have the hands-on experience what can happen with housing markets. And you know why? Because we have the rental contracts, we have the energy bills. We can tell you household per household, street per street, what is happening. So I hope that they will continue to ask for our intelligence and experience, but also incorporate us formally and institutionally in the next steps. This is crucial.
Yes. Julie Lawson insists on having your opinion on this 20-year requirement. Is there a risk that we invest taxpayers' money into affordable housing that is affordable only for 20 years and then rents will explode? Are you worried about this, Barbara, about this time limit?
Yes.
That is
yes.
as well?
Yes, and I hope this is a formulation at least 20 years. Of course, the International Union of Tenants has been in the hearing with the Vice President of the European Commission, Teresa Ribera, has said, what is once affordable social or public housing must stay public, social and affordable housing forever. But unfortunately, the private investors had their say there. And I think, again, this is a balancing on a very thin line of the Commission. What we can do at national level, nobody is hampering us saying we want financing rules. If we give money to private investors, they have to sign that this is going to be public, affordable social housing forever.
Forever, yes. So you should interpret this at least as really an opening to the governments to say, when we spend money on this, we will spend it to housing that is kept this way. So we need to close this session. I want you to close by saying something of what maybe you will focus particularly on, if there are parts of this European affordable housing plan that you are particularly worried about, or would you think that maybe we as opinion makers or people are involved in the tenants movement? I know a lot of people that are listening now are involved in the climate movement as well. They want to see more repurposing, more renovation, more energy efficiency. What should we look at in the months to come now? Want to start, Barbara, and we'll end with Martin.
With pleasure, and thank you, Lisa, also giving us this opportunity. Where do we have to take a very close look? Social safeguards for tenants, meaning if money is used to build more public, social and affordable housing, there must be a clear law on rent caps, unlimited rental contracts, and a maximum of security of tenure people. The second, when renovating, modernizing housing, this is the energy and climate issue, we want to have an implementation of the principle of housing cost neutrality to avoid displacement, gentrification, and renovation. What does this mean? Housing cost neutrality means that increases in the basic rent, which are possible in 21 member states in Europe after renovation, must be at least balanced by energy savings at the same amount, so that your overall housing costs remain the same. Unfortunately, this principle of housing cost neutrality, which is one of the major social safeguards for tenants to stay in their neighborhood, is not part of the plan. And this is very disappointing. And there we will put a lot of emphasis on, as well as on financialization and on transparency. We want to know who our landlords are, if they are big funds, if they are vulture funds, if they are big investors who want to make profit with us by rotating profits, selling the stock more and more and increasing every time the rents. I think these are very important points for us.
Excellent, Barbara. Martin, what will you be looking out for and what will you focus on?
So we will monitor the SGI revision. That's the core for this plan for us. And we
The state subsidies.
Exactly. So we will ensure that these new rules protect rather than dismantle our universal model. And when that is clear for us, which I hope we get some clarity in, then we will, of course, intensify our advocacy efforts to enact real state subsidies in Sweden. Because then we will be able to do so without the EU Commission saying no to us. But then I also mentioned Allbolagen earlier in this seminar, and we will use the inherent flexibility of Allbolagen to push municipalities to prioritize social benefit over maximum profit. And we will have this added winterized sales from the EU shifting stance. So that will be those two aspects of it we will push for.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Barbara Steenbergen and Martin Hofverberg from International Union of Tenants, Brussels Liaison Office. And Martin is, of course, the chief economist of Hyresgästföreningen and the Swedish Union of Tenants. I am sure we will all hear much more from you in this exciting coming months, but I at least leave this seminar with a little optimism, knowing that there's been a lot of work done, there's been some substantial achievements, but there's a lot to be done as well. Please continue following us at Arena Idé and Bostad 2030. We will keep you updated on these issues. Thank you so much for joining us, Barbara and Martin. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.